So hi Jacqueline, how are you?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I watched My Animal last night and absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you.
It was like breathtaking to be completely honest. Like with
Oh, thank you so
lighting,
much. I really
music,
appreciate
and
that.
everything is great.
Thank you.
Um, and this is also your feature film debut. How does that feel?
I don't know, wild. You go through so much, I think, in putting together a feature film, and it's over such a longer period of time. And obviously, you're working over a longer span of time just with the film itself and the movie itself. And it's so interesting to just see how all the highs and lows of the journey. So it's really exciting to be on the precipice of the commercial release of the film, just to see how everybody responds to it and reacts to it. I've gotten a little bit of a sense of it from being on the festival circuit, but it'll be really interesting to see how people operate outside of that, because I do feel that films can kind of almost morph and change in the theatrical environment, or and when people watch it at home, or it people's perspectives can change just depending on the feeling in a room. So it'll be really cool to see how people respond to it in different parts of the country, and and what they appreciate about it, because everybody has different things that they love about the movie, and I like that it's an open conversation.
Yeah, I do too. So in your words, like what are people in for when they watch My Animal?
Ooh. Well, I would say first of all that it's a movie that expresses my love for the outsider, and a movie that expresses my okay, wait, I'm gonna start over with that one. Is that okay? um, yeah, I think that My Animal is a movie that expresses my love for the outsider, and I love that this film has so many different layers. It's a werewolf movie, and it's a love story, and it's also a story about family, and a story about what gets passed along through the generations, and about first love and what that opens up within ourselves, and alerts us to what we need to heal within ourselves to embrace who it is that we are.
That's all great things.
Okay, great.
Um, and this was written by Jay Matthews.
Mhm.
When you were reading the script, like, what was it that sold you on, like, I need to make this?
Well, I think, yeah, when I first got the script, I think what I just really connected to were the characters. I just really I was reading it, and it just felt really familiar, or it was when you read something and you feel seen somehow, like there's somebody else who has a similar kind of, perspective or worldview, or there's similar family dynamics or things like that, that you just I know this world, and I know this situation, I know this setup, and I think it just has to resonate with you on an emotional level first and foremost, and so that's what I really connected to. I loved how she had crafted the characters and their worlds. And so that was the thing. And then, and then we met up to discuss it and talk about it. And then we started kind of working through it and strengthening things before production together, to get it to the right place. But yeah, at its core, it has to strike emotionally and personally.
Right. And what's nice is that like we can find ourselves in both Heather and Johnny, and there's just a lot that's relatable about both of them.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so what was it like working with Bobby and Amanda, and what made them perfect for these roles?
Well, I mean, it was first off, it was incredible working with both of them. And I think a lot of that, I'm someone who's very particular about how I approach my casting process. I'm not someone who wants to put 500 people on a list. I want to really hone in and target people that I think are really right for the role, and who can bring some part of themselves to the work as well. Just like you were talking about this idea of what was I connected to the script, I want those actors to also come to it and feel connected to these characters and to the world. And so I do a lot of research before I approach actors, And, I try not to think about, the commercial aspects or any of that. I just try to think about, okay, does this feel right? Does this emotionally feel right? And do I think these two people could work really well together? And so I feel very lucky because Bobby and Amandla were both my top picks. So I feel very fortunate for that, for my first feature, to get my top picks. um, and I went out to Bobby first, because I really wanted to build the world. The world really had to be built around Heather first, and then Johnny. So those are the first two roles that I cast. But I went out to Bobby, and Bobby really responded to the script and was like, I love it. This is exactly the kind of projects I want to do. And I remember like their manager saying, oh, Bobby's very particular, and then it really like clicked with Bobby. And then when we had our first Zoom, and this is in the beginning of the pandemic, Bobby just asked, so who's going to be Johnny? And when I said Amanda Stenberg's name, Bobby was like ecstatic, because they actually knew each other from the queer scene in New York and LA, which I didn't know. And so that was really exciting, because they had been wanting to find a reason to work together as well. And so it just worked like so perfectly that was how it was set up. And so then basically we went out to Amanda, and then Bobby was kind of like on the side, just being like, we should work together on this. So I thought that was really exciting. And then you kind of get to build trust really early on, because there's already a relationship in place. People aren't coming in cold to a production. And so that really helped us when we had to jump into certain scenes very early on from a scheduling perspective. Like we had to jump into the love scene. I think like it was the second or third day of production. And so having that like basis really helps, right? Because people are already comfortable, and again, you're not starting from zero.
Is it normal to start with such intimate scenes like that?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I don't know if there's anything normal in film production. I think it can be in
Fair.
all sorts of different directions, but I felt, I had talked to them about it, and I was like, I think that we can do this. And I think in some ways it was interesting. There was almost like an interesting sense of like relief, like, oh, that build up to that scene we're going to kind of get it out of the way. And I think it was very interesting the way it happened, but a lot of it had to do just with, when you're on a small indie production, you just, like sometimes your schedule just has to work in a certain way. And that's when it was going to kind of work out. But I think it was nice because, yeah, it took the pressure off once that scene was completed. And I think it just created so much more chemistry between them for the rest of the film, and knowing what they were going to build into and know what they were going to anticipate. So I think it actually worked out really well, because it bonded them really intensely.
And that's awesome. And it
Yeah.
shows on screen. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
um, can you explain a little bit about your approach to the supernatural element of this?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I thought like I always love this idea of kind of having things be a little bit on the line, like not too on the nose, or where we're kind of questioning a little bit like what's happening to this family, and having a little and viewing it with a little bit of mystery and intrigue. So I really wanted to like craft that. Like we have this sort of opening prelude where we know that something has happened to this like young woman, and that there's something that happened between her and her mom that's like hinting at this transformation. But after that, there's a little bit of this like slow burn reveal as to what's actually going on with her. And that was something I really responded to as well in the script. Like I remember when there was the moment where she's locking herself in at night, before she goes to bed. And I was like, that's so intriguing and so interesting to see it being presented in that way, where it's less of this like in your face genre, but it's slowly revealing itself to the audience, and just creating just sort of interesting questions for the viewer, and allowing them to kind of like project their own ideas of what's happening in the film. So I really loved coming at it from that perspective, of taking the genre but blending it with all these other elements. So yeah, I love that about the script too.
Yeah, it was just really nice to see that, like, while it was like a supernatural film, the human elements and like the human dilemmas kind of overshadowed that, and it was almost like
Mhm.
they were like the bigger issue versus like the
Yeah.
typical, like the supernatural is the biggest issue the characters have to deal with. So
Yeah, exactly. It's operating as like I think as a metaphor, like of the things that we keep hidden, in our lives, and that it can be a lot more broad than it just being a strict definition of supernatural. That it can be like a metaphor for anything that we feel shame over, or that we feel that we can't express within society.
which just keeps adding to the relatability of the film and the characters.
Absolutely.
um can you explain the title a little bit? Like My Animal, like was that always the title?
Yeah, that was always the title of the film. And I really, really love the title. At first, I remember there were some earlier conversations on if we should change it, but the more that I sat with it, the more I was like, no, this is a really cool title. It's so nuanced and so like interesting at what it's like hinting at, this idea of like the animal that we all have within ourselves, that every individual has, and that sort of very personal journey to come to understand that part of ourselves, and the stuff that and the elements of ourselves again that we are trying to kind of keep hidden are really actually the keys to transforming our life, because once you start to I don't know, incorporate the elements of yourself that you feel you should have shame over, that's when I feel like you can actually really transform. So I think there's an element about that I really love, is like um to realize yourself as an individual within society is to embrace who you are completely, flaws and all. So I really loved how it hints at that within the title.
That makes sense now. It's one of those, like, looking at it and I'm like, that's a really cool title, but like
Yeah.
I don't, because I'm not immersed in the story through all of the
Yeah.
production, I don't fully understand. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Um, so now that the film's going to be released and the public's going to be able to see it, what is one thing that you're just super excited for them to see?
Um, I mean, I think I'm most excited for people to, I mean, for me, what's really important about cinema is the opportunity for it to like bring people together, and for it to bring together like dialogue and conversation. So I'm really excited to see how that happens, both in physical spaces, in theaters, people like coming together and experiencing something together. And also to see how it manifests online, and then how people respond to it in that way too, or how they then talk about it online. So it's just going to be very interesting to see the response that everybody has to the film, because I feel like it's different each time almost it screens. I've seen it on the festival track for a little while, and it's cool to see how something that seems so fixed, like a movie, it's not like the movie is actually changing, it's not a live performance, but audiences respond differently to it, and then it makes the movie feel different. It's very interesting, like you see it in a room that's like, at a genre film festival, or seeing it at Outfest in LA, and just seeing how people like pick up on different things or what they connect with is really intriguing to me. So I'm just excited to see how people respond to the film.
That is interesting. I wonder if there's going to be like an obvious theme, or if it is going to be just very all over the place. For sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Um, so that was kind of all of my questions. But before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add about My Animal?
Um, no, I think just go out and see it in the movie theater if you can. Open September 8th at Alamo Drafthouse, and yeah, like I think that's the biggest thing. Go out and see it and tell your friends about it.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Um, well, thank you for chatting. Again, I love the movie and
Thank you so much.
I wish it the best.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
You have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Bye.